In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about frog fishing and why people hate throwing a frog. Now, me personally, I love a frog. It's probably my favorite lure of all time to throw and to catch fish on. I mean, if I could catch fish on a frog 365 days a year, I absolutely would. Now, that's not a realistic goal, but I absolutely love throwing a frog. There's nothing like throwing a frog and having a bass blow up on it and just absolutely jack in their face with a couple big old frog hooks. But a lot of people despise the frog. They don't like it. And it's because I think they don't know a few key tips about the frog that make it a super effective bait in a lot more scenarios than I think you guys think. And so in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about that. So the first factor is going to be the fact that people don't fish frogs in anything other than heavy vegetation or heavy cover. Now, the frog and the nature of the frog makes it a great tool for those areas. You know, when the vegetation gets matted out, you get those cheese mats and lily pads and grass and lay downs. I mean, you can put this frog about dang near anywhere and put it places that you can't put other lures, and that's what makes it so effective in those areas. But the thing about it is that the frog is as effective, if not more effective, in other areas as well. So one of my favorite things to do is walking the frog. Now that just means literally walking the frog like you would walk a spook or a popper or any other walking style topwater bait. And I will fish this bait in open water literally 90% of the time more than I'll fish it in vegetation, because when I think about fish in vegetation, you know, fish in vegetation around me anyway is about that wide of a window, where fishing open water is like that wide of a window. I can literally fish open water with a topwater from, I don't know, May until September, October, like that time frame. And so I can fish a frog a lot more effectively in open water than I can in vegetation, because I just don't fish vegetation as much. So like I said, the window's a lot more. So if you can learn to walk the frog, literally make the frog just walk back and forth, the effectiveness of the frog goes up, because not only can you fish it in open water, but you can also put it places that you can't put other topwaters. You know, not places where like matted vegetation or lay downs or brush piles or things like that, but just simply up under a boat dock or up under overhanging limbs, where if you try to throw a spook or a popper in there, either the trebles would get hung up or you would get the bait hung up. You can put a frog in those same areas and walk it out of there and get some massive blowups. And that's really, for me, where I find it to be the most effective. The next thing is going to be people fish a frog straight out of the package with no modifications. And I think that that's one of the biggest flaws that people make. And that's because a lot of the times when it comes to frog fishing, when you get them straight out of the package, they're gonna have really, really long tails. And this one actually has pretty long tails. I would actually trim these up a little bit. But what's really cool about the Swamp Lord is that these tails are pre-trimmed. And that's exactly how I determine how I'm going to trim my tails. What I'll do is I'll take those tails, I'll fold them up, and if they hang past the line tie, I'm going to trim them right up even with the line tie. And that is going to make this frog a lot more effective, because if you fish a frog with really long tails, what will happen a lot of the times, and this is what I've noticed, is that fish will key in on those tails before they key in on the body, and they'll actually just grab the tails like this, and they never get a hook in their mouth. And so when you go to swing, you just jerk that frog right away from those fish and don't actually ever get a hook in them. And sometimes of the year, I'll even trim the legs up like significantly and make them really, really short so that they focus in right on the body. And that's because there's different things that I fish a frog around, and when bass are biting different things. And this is going to be my last point, is that a lot of people think that a frog only mimics a frog. It's the furthest thing from the truth. A frog can do a really good job of imitating bluegill, bait fish, and I think the most important, different types of insects. I have the most success with a frog when the cicadas are hatching and when the mayflies are hatching. And I think a lot of it has to do with the tails on the back of that frog. Like I said, they do a really good job of imitating those little micro movements that different types of bugs and things make on top of the water. Now I know there's a lot of bluegill that show up. They'll start eating those bugs as well. I think they looks like a bluegill as well. But I've seen so many times when there's no bluegill in the area and there's just a bunch of mayflies, and I can throw a brown frog with brown legs, and those little legs just get to shimmer right in the bottom, and those fish will just come up and just barely suck that thing down. And it's because I think the legs look like the vibration of a mayfly's wings on top of the water, and those fish crush it. And if you want to see that in action, click this video that's popping up right here.